Order. Order. The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Well, we've had more shock, horror, overreach and outrage from the opposition, always jumping up and down and confecting outrage. And that, Mr Speaker, is why I believe that Mr Little is in danger of being overtaken by Len Brown to be the most successful Labour leader in Auckland at the moment, and it's why that party is struggling. To engage with New Zealanders and the concerns that New Zealanders have, and that's why this government, which is focused on what New Zealand families and what New Zealanders are looking for in terms of jobs, growth, access to good education and health care, and they've seen that this government has been very focused on their needs and their concerns, and that's why we continue to have that high level of support. So if you think that having 74,000 new jobs in this economy than this time last year is not important, then I think you're out of touch with what Aucklanders and New Zealanders really want. And it's why we're working hard to improve our public services and welfare and health and education. And Mr Speaker, I want to touch on a couple of the areas that in my ministerial responsibility, which relate to how we can, as a government, help families, Kiwi families, get ahead. And the most important thing is, or the couple of areas. One is in the cost of living, and there's two ways that you can improve living standards in this country, and that is economic growth, which is what this government has a fantastic track record on, 3% this year, and one of the leading growth countries and economies in the developed world, and why we've got projections for further growth over the next little while. But the other way is to make each dollar go further, and that's why a strong, competitive domestic economy is so important. And Mr Speaker, the competition laws, which I have some responsibility for, are fundamental to maintaining that disciplined and competitive domestic economy. And so we've got the cartels legislation, which is halfway through the House, which will be progressing very quickly, which is all about sending a clear message that we don't tolerate any of that behaviour. And we've also got a review coming up of Section 36 of the competition law, which relates to the misuse of market power. Because, Mr Speaker, we do not want to put any barriers in the way of new entrants coming into any industries in this country, shaking things up, making it more competitive so that New Zealanders have more money in their pockets when they go out and buy their shorts and their shoes, their food, every industry that they deal with, that there's a strong competitive economy and industry in New Zealand is a fundamental important thing. The other thing, and we keep on hearing about house prices, well, one of the reasons why New Zealanders have invested in houses, residential housing for so long, is it's very hard for somebody to steal your house, and the contrary idea of putting your savings into financial markets over the last 30 or 40 years has been a difficult one, and so many New Zealanders have lost their savings over the years. And so the most important thing we can do in financial markets is to build confidence in the system, and so that's why this government has gone through a huge change in the Financial Markets Conduct Act last year, and my focus very much as Minister of Commerce is to make sure that we implement that well over the next couple of years, and so that New Zealanders, when they're looking at where they're going to put their money, don't just have residential real estate as one option, but they are more likely to invest in financial markets and build on their Kiwi Saver funds, which have been so important to building understanding of those financial markets. Mr Speaker, and also we're working on a review of the Financial Advisors Act, which is about giving advice to Kiwis. On the whole, our financial literacy could be improved, and we've put in a regime there for financial advisors for the last 3 years, and we want to make sure that we've got that right, that any conflicts of interest are dealt with properly, that the costs and the regulatory burden of giving advice isn't too high that fewer people get advice. And so we're focused on that, as we're also focused on the broader idea of financial literacy, because there's no more important thing you can do for New Zealand families than to help them understand how money works, how interest works, and how to improve that financial literacy within families in their homes in New Zealand. And that's why this government has more than trebled the amount of money that's been put into budgeting services through MSD, and I think that's a very important step. We've also been working hard through our consumer laws around the responsible lending code, again trying to make sure that people who are offering money or lending money have to ask basic questions about the ability of the person to pay back loans, and so that they fully understand the full extent of those loans. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call Julianne Genter.
Thank you.